The observation deck of the real diplomatic cruiser Truthseeker had been converted into a war room. Screens covered every surface, each one feeding live data from the planet below. Ambassador Vell watched the numbers. Climb, casualty estimates, ammunition, expenditure, population displacement, and felt nothing but efficiency. This species will collapse within 12 cycles, he said, his tactical advisor. Commander Jessa Thorne adjusted the projection parameters. Our models suggest 15. Their infrastructure damage exceeds sustainable levels. Ver gestured. At the main display, blue icons marked human-controlled territory, red icons marked the opposition. The line between them had barely moved in 3 cycles. 20 years of continuous combat, 7 billion dead, 14 major cities reduced to rubble. And they continue fighting over what? Land disputes, ideological differences, resource allocation. Thorne's mandibles clicked in confusion. The reasons shift. Every 6 to 8 months, new alliances form. Old ones dissolve. Their conflict has more fractal patterns than any war we've cataloged. Below the cruiser, Earth rotated in. Silent, nuclear fire bloomed across its night side, small detonations, tactical weapons used against military concentrations. VL had watched this species tear itself apart for 3 cycles now. He documented their savagery with clinical precision. Each report reinforced the same conclusion. Humans were too aggressive, too stubborn, too fractured to ever become a threat. Another decade of this, he said. Minimum, then fragmentation into smaller states, then another century of regional conflicts before they either exterminate themselves or achieve stable governance. Thorne nodded. The Council agrees. We maintain observation protocols, but recommend no contact until they unify. Ver turned from the screens. Below them, a species burned. Above them, the stars waited. The galaxy had seen this pattern countless times. Young species destroying themselves in the chaos of maturation. Earth was nothing special. Humans were nothing special. Extend the observation period, he said. We'll check back in 50 cycles. The ship's communication officer interrupted. Ambassador, I'm receiving a signal from the surface. V's head tilted. Identify the source. Unknown. Encrypted beyond our protocols. Pause. They're asking for a meeting. Thorne's mandibles clicked faster. That's impossible. Their transmission technology shouldn't. They're not using transmission technology. The officer's voice carried something VL had never heard before. Fear. They're using our own communication arrays. Someone on the planet just bypassed every security protocol we possess and sent a message through our ship systems. The screens flickered. The casualty numbers vanished. In their place, a single sentence appeared, written in perfect real script. We know you're watching. It's time to talk. VL stared at the words. 20 cycles of observation. 20 cycles, assuming this species was too fractured, too primitive, too consumed by internal war to notice their orbital observers. Below them, Earth burned. Somewhere in that fire, someone had just reached up and touched the stars. The human delegation appeared in council headquarters without warning. No ships on approach, no landing signatures, no transit records through any monitored corridor. One moment the reception hall stood empty. The next 4 humans stood beneath the central arch, adjusting their clothing as if they'd simply walked through a door. VL arrived within 60 beats of the alarm. He found council, security forces surrounding the delegation with weapons raised. The humans hadn't moved. They stood in a loose formation, hands visible, expressions neutral. Their leader, a female with close-cropped silver hair and a scar across her left jaw, met his gaze. Without fear, Ambassador Vel, she said, "Thank you for receiving us." He didn't ask how she knew his name. The message through his ship systems had already answered that question. "You are Commander Tessa Marlowe." "I am." She gestured to the three figures behind her. "My tactical advisor, my intelligence coordinator, and my diplomatic liaison were here to discuss the border war." VL's secondary heart accelerated. The border war, a conflict between the Rand Federation and the Kaith collective that had consumed 70 cycles, 40 billion lives, and 17 star systems. Every diplomatic solution had failed. Every military offensive had stalled. The Council had declared it unsolvable. "I don't understand," Vel said. Marlowe's expression didn't change. "Your war has reached a permanent stalemate. Both sides have fortified every approachable frontier. Direct assault would cost millions of lives for minimal territorial gain. Indirect strategies have failed. Diplomatic channels are exhausted." She paused. "You need someone who thinks differently. This is not a matter for a species that cannot govern itself." The words came out sharper than VL intended. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Marlowe simply nodded. 27 years of civil war, 11 factions reduced to 2, 14 million combat casualties. Infrastructure loss estimated at 60% of pre-war capacity. She recited the numbers like a shopping list. "You've been watching from orbit. You think we're broken. You are broken. Broken. Things can still cut." Marlowe stepped forward. Security tensed. She stopped. "Your war will continue for another 40 cycles at current attrition rates. Neither side can win. Neither side will surrender. You've accepted this as inevitable." "It is inevitable." "No." Marlowe's voice dropped. "It's a 3-week problem." The reception hall went silent. Ver searched her face for signs of delusion, of ignorance, of the species-wide madness. He documented for 20 cycles. He found nothing but certainty. "You're asking us to trust a species that spent 2 decades burning its own cities." "I'm not asking for trust." Marlowe reached into her jacket, weapons raised. She removed a small data cylinder and placed it on the floor. "I'm asking for 3 weeks. Let us access your intelligence networks, your prisoner populations, your supply chains. We'll end the war within that time frame or withdraw permanently." Ver looked at the cylinder, looked at the humans, looked at the silent security forces who had no idea how these 4 individuals had bypassed every defense in the galactic capital. "What do you want in return?" Marlowe smiled. "It wasn't warm. Nothing. Nothing. Your war is in our way. There's territory beyond your borders we need to access. Clean this up and we can move on." She turned to leave. 3 weeks. Starting tomorrow. She walked toward the arch. Security didn't stop her. The other 3 humans followed. Ver watched them vanish through a doorway that led nowhere. Maintenance passage sealed for decades. His communication device chimed. Message from Orbital Command. "Ambassador, we've located their ship. It's been parked in our main docking bay for 6 days. 6 days. Their life support signatures suggest they've been aboard The entire time, Ver closed the device. The humans had walked through the heart of Council security, announced themselves in his own language, and demonstrated capabilities his analysts couldn't explain. He retrieved the data cylinder from the floor. 3 weeks the Council chambers held 400 delegates from 60 species. Every major power in explored space had sent representatives. The Cath ambassador sat on one side of the central aisle. The Rillan ambassador sat on the other. Between them, Commander Tessa Marlowe stood alone at the speaking podium. "You're insane," the Ka ambassador said. His name was Voss. He had 7 eyes, arranged in a circle around his skull, and every single one of them was fixed on Marlowe. "You want access to our military command structures, our supply depots, our prisoner populations in exchange for what? Words." "Access," Marlowe repeated, "not control. We observe, we analyze, we make recommendations." Voss's translator couldn't capture his disgust. "We've had 70 cycles of recommendations from tacticians, from diplomats, from species who have fought wars longer than your civilization has existed." Marlowe turned to face him, the scar on her jaw caught the chamber's light. "Your last major offensive failed because you attacked their eastern supply hub. You assumed it was critical because 50% of their logistical traffic passed through it. You were wrong. Their real hub was 3 systems west, hidden inside a gas giant's upper atmosphere. You missed it because their ships changed course too cleanly. Your analysts thought they were decoys." The chamber went quiet. "How do you know this?" Voss's eyes narrowed. "I watched your battle recordings, 73 hours of them. Your ships never engaged targets near that gas giant, not once in 6 years of conflict. You were avoiding that area because your sensors detected nothing there." Marlowe stepped closer to his delegation platform. "Nothing is the hardest thing to see. You trained yourselves to look for evidence. You forgot to look for absence." Ray watched from the real end delegation. He'd spent the night reviewing the data cylinder. The humans had analyzed 30 years of border conflict in 12 hours. Their conclusions were disturbing. "We have our own analysts," Vil said. "Our own methods. Your methods are 3,000 years old." Marlowe didn't look away from Voss. "You fight wars like accountants. You calculate force ratios, supply lines, tactical probabilities. You've optimized the mathematics of conflict too. It's logical extreme." She spread her arms. "It doesn't work. The Cathar know your moves before you make them. The real know theirs. You've created perfect symmetry, perfect stalemate, perfect death." Voss made a sound that might have been anger or agreement. "And you would break this symmetry. How? We would think differently." Marlowe finally turned to face the entire chamber. "Humans don't fight like you. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We don't measure opportunity costs. We don't surrender. When victory becomes mathematically improbable," her voice hardened, "we fight like extinction is the only alternative to victory, because for most of our history it was." She tapped the podium. Holographic display appeared showing Earth from orbit. VL recognized the image, his own surveillance footage, somehow stolen and modified. "This is our civil war," Marlowe said. 27 years of bloodshed. You saw chaos. You saw failure. You saw a species tearing itself apart. The display shifted, showing tactical overlays, supply Routes communication networks. Population movements, we saw. Laboratory. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions. Voss rose from his seat. Ver's own translator malfunctioned. From attempting to process multiple languages simultaneously. Marlowe waited. We fought each other with everything we had, she continued. When the noise faded, every tactic, every weapon, every strategy that 2 decades of total war could produce, and in the process we learned something. Her eyes swept across the chamber. We learned how to break things that refused to break. She looked directly at Voss, directly at VL, directly at every delegate who had dismissed humanity as a failed experiment. 3 weeks, no weapons, no soldiers, no territory. She stepped away from the podium. Give us access and we'll show you what war looks like when it's fought by people who have never known peace. The council voted. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Vass's final words echoed in Vel's mind as the chamber emptied. If you're wrong, human, your species dies with this vote. Marlowe paused at the doorway. I'm not wrong. The human teams deployed at dawn on day 1. 300 individuals scattered across 17 Cathar prison facilities and 9 military outposts. No weapons, no armor, no technology beyond standard council issue communication equipment. Ver observed from the real command center. Screens showed each human in real time. Most of them simply talked. The Kythe prisoners were the first targets. VL watched a human named Cedo sit across from a Kythe warrior who'd been captured 30 cycles ago. The warrior hadn't spoken to interrogators in 20 years. Within 4 hours he was drawing maps on the floor with a piece of chalk. What did you say to him? Ver asked. Through the communication link. Cedo didn't look up. I asked him what he missed home, family, the taste of food from his spawning season, the smell of rain on his home world soil. Cedo's voice was calm. He's been alone for 3 decades. No one asked him about anything except military intelligence. He was waiting for someone to remember he was alive. VL watched the warrior draw. Not military installations, not supply routes, a map of his childhood home. The human had opened a door no interrogator had thought to touch. Day 2 brought failures. 3 human teams were expelled from real facilities after attempting to interview personnel without proper authorization. 2 more were detained by Cathorn security for accessing restricted databases. Voss sent a message to the council. This is what we expected. Terminate the experiment. Marlowe overrode the order. They're learning, she told V, the restrictions. Tell us what they're hiding. Watch Day 3. A human named Anquo requested access to waste disposal records at a Cathorn supply depot. The request was denied. He requested again. Denied. 3rd time approved. Waste disposal. Ver asked. Supply lines. Leave traces. Anquo said food. Packaging, medical waste, ammunition. Casings. You can't hide what you throw away. He pulled up a chart there. Eastern Depot is consuming 40% more protein rations than reported personnel levels suggest. They have troops there. Not accounting for Day 4. Everything changed. 3 real supply depots exploded with 90 beats of each other. No warning, no attack signatures, nothing on sensors. The explosion simply happened and the depot simply ceased to exist. Ver demanded answers. Marlowe provided them. Your own personnel, she said. Maintenance workers who have been shifting inventory reports for 6 cycles. They've been selling supplies to the KTHN black market. The explosions were accidents, improper storage of volatile compounds. Your security teams missed it because they were looking for external threats. That's impossible. We vet our personnel. You vet their records, you don't vet their desperation. Marlowe pulled up files. 17 workers with family in Kathan territory, 6 more with gambling debts, 4 with medical conditions your health care system doesn't cover. They weren't traitors, they were people trying to survive. And your intelligence apparatus never noticed because you don't think about people, you think about assets. Ver wanted to argue. The evidence silenced him. Day 5, the Kathan communication network began showing anomalies, unauthorized access requests, data routing errors, priority messages sent to wrong addresses. Nothing catastrophic, just errors. Marlowe's team had done nothing illegal. They'd simply requested access to public directories. The Kthorn security protocols responded by flagging those requests as suspicious. Then the protocols flagged each other. Then the flags triggered more flags. By day 6, 17% of Cath military communications were being routed through verification queues that didn't exist. Messages that should take 30 beats to transmit were taking 30 hours. It's called a recursion cascade. Marlowe explained. Your security systems are designed to check each other for vulnerabilities. We just gave them something to check. They're doing the rest themselves. Voss's message was shorter this time. What are you doing? Marlowe's reply: winning. Day 8 began with silence. The KTHN communication network had degraded to 37% efficiency. Supply convoys were arriving at wrong depots. Troop movements were being routed through contested space. Their eastern fleet had spent 6 hours maneuvering to intercept a RAN attack that didn't exist. VL watched the chaos from the command center. His own forces hadn't moved. Humans had told him to wait, to watch, to do nothing while their enemy disintegrated from within. They're not disintegrating, Marlowe corrected. They're adapting. Watch the western sector. The western sector. Ver pulled up the display. KTHN ships were repositioning, not randomly but with purpose. They were consolidating around their primary shipyard, retreating from exposed positions, forming a defensive perimeter that would be nearly impenetrable. They're good, Marlowe admitted. Most species would collapse under this pressure. Your enemy has discipline. They've had 70 cycles to develop it. 70 cycles of fighting the same war, same tactics, same strategies, same enemy. Marlowe pointed at the display. They're retreating to their strongest defensive positions. That's their instinct. Consolidate, protect what matters, wait for the crisis to pass. You're criticizing them for being smart. I'm criticizing them for being predictable. Marlowe turned to face him. Every species in the galaxy fights the same way. You find your strongest positions and you hold them. You protect your supply lines and you defend your territory. You've been doing this for 10,000 years. It's not strategy anymore. It's reflex. Ver felt something cold settle in his stomach, and humans don't have this reflex. We have different reflexes. Marlowe pulled up a new display. Earth. Again, the Civil War. Watch the footage. Showed a human city under siege. Defenders firing from fortified positions. Attackers advancing through Destroyed buildings, standard urban warfare, then everything changed. Defenders abandoned their positions. Hundreds of soldiers simply stood up and walked away from the only cover they had. The attackers hesitated, confused by behavior that made no tactical sense. In that hesitation, the defenders reached secondary positions the attackers hadn't identified, firing lines that didn't exist 30 beats ago. Fields of fire that required the defenders to expose themselves as bait. They used themselves as bait. They used their own survival as a weapon. Marlowe froze the footage. Every species in the galaxy fights to preserve life. Humans fight to preserve something else. Victory, revenge, principle, anything that matters more than breathing. She looked at the frozen image of soldiers running through open ground. That's why our civil war lasted 20 years. Neither side could accept defeat, not because surrender was impossible, because surrender was unacceptable. Day 10, the Ka fleet finished consolidating around their shipyard. Perfect defensive formation, impenetrable to any known assault. Voss sent a message gloating about their resilience. Marlowe's team responded by igniting the shipyard's fuel reserves. Not through sabotage, not through infiltration, through a supply requisition form filed 17 cycles ago, buried in archives so deep no one remembered it existed. The form authorized emergency fuel dispersal in the event of a commander's death. Commander who'd been dead for 12 cycles. A form that had never been rescinded. Function that had never been disabled. The fuel ignited, the shipyard burned. 300 KTHN ships trapped inside their own perfect defensive formation, unable to escape without breaking formation, unable to fight without fuel, unable to do anything but watch their strongest position become their tomb. Voss's next message was different. How? Marlowe's reply: you asked for access to everything. We read everything. Day 12, the Cathar High Command requested a ceasefire. Day 13, they offered surrender terms. Day 14, Marlowe declined. Vlasian deck watching the Ka fleet drift through space. Their formation had finally broken. Ships were fleeing in every direction, not retreating, fleeing. There was a difference. You have what you wanted, Vel said. The war is over. The war isn't over. Marlowe didn't turn. The fighting is over. The war is just beginning. What does that mean? She finally faced him. Her eyes were tired. We've broken their military. That's the easy part. Now we have to break something harder. What? Everything they believe about themselves. Day 15, Marlowe walked into the Cath High Command alone. No weapons, no guards, no negotiation team, just her walking through corridors filled with soldiers who'd spent 70 cycles hating her allies. Soldiers who'd watched their fleet burn. Soldiers who'd learned that humans didn't fight like anything they understood. Voss met her at the command sense entrance. His 7 eyes were bloodshot. You came to gloat, I came to finish. This. Marlowe stepped past him. Bring your command staff, bring your records, bring everything you think matters. She stopped in the center of the room. I'm going to show you why you lost. The command staff assembled slowly. 30 officers, 20 strategists, a dozen intelligence analysts, every one of them watching the human woman who dismantled their war machine without firing a shot. Marlowe activated the room's display systems. Your first mistake was assuming war has rules. She pulled up battle footage, 70 cycles of engagements, every major conflict between Cathan and Rillan. Forces, every tactic, every counter tactic, every assumption that had guided their military doctrine for generations. You assume territory matters, it doesn't. You assume supply lines matter, they do, but not the way you think. You assumed victory means the other side surrendering. She highlighted a specific engagement. This battle 30 cycles ago, you outnumbered the real 3-1. You had superior positioning, superior firepower. You lost because you stopped fighting when the real retreated. Voss's primary eyes narrowed. They retreated, that's victory. They retreated to draw you into a trap. You fell for it because you assumed retreat means defeat. Marlowe pulled up human footage, Civil War battles, charges that should have been suicidal, retreats that turned into ambushes, last stands that lasted for months. Humans don't retreat when we're beaten, we retreat when we want you to follow. The Cathorn analyst shifted uncomfortably. Your second mistake was assuming war has an end. Marlowe advanced through the footage. You fight to win, to achieve peace, to return to normal. That's not how humans fight. She stopped on an image of a ruined city. We fight to break things, not just armies, not just infrastructure, the things that make you sure you're right. She pointed at Vass. You were sure the rain couldn't find your supply hub. You were sure your security protocols couldn't be compromised. You were sure your defensive formation would protect your shipyard. Each word landed like a blow. You were wrong about everything because you assumed your enemy thought like you. We thought like warriors. No, you thought like prey. Marlowe's voice dropped. Prey animals build walls. They form defensive herds. They hide in places they think are safe. Predators don't do any of that. Predators walk into open ground and dare you to stop them. She turned to face the entire room. Your third mistake was the biggest. You assumed we wanted something from you. Voss's mandibles clicked. Everyone wants something. We want nothing. Marlowe walked toward him. Not your territory, not your resources, not your surrender, nothing. We came here because your war was blocking our expansion. That's it. You were an inconvenience, a traffic jam on a road we wanted to use. She stopped inches from Voss. When you understand that we didn't defeat you for any reason except that you were in our way, you'll understand why you should never ever make us notice you again. The room went silent. Vass's voice, when it came, was barely audible. What are you? Marlowe stepped back. We're what happens when a species evolves on a world that tries to kill them every single day. Every earthquake, every storm, every predator, every disease. Our planet spent 4 billion years trying to murder us. She smiled. It failed. Now we're here. She walked to the door and paused. You have 18 hours to sign unconditional surrender. The Rainin will be generous because they're afraid of us. Take advantage of that. The door opened. Don't make us come back. She left. The COG command staff sat in silence. Somewhere in the distance, a human ship prepared for departure. The war had lasted 70 cycles. It ended in 18 days. The victory celebration lasted 6 hours. Council delegates congratulated each other. Military commanders accepted medals. Ambassadors signed treaties that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Commander Tessa Marlowe stood in a corner of the main hall, watching without participating. Ver approached with 2 glasses of real wine. You don't celebrate, I don't celebrate death. Marlowe accepted the glass but didn't drink. 70 cycles of it. 40 billion lives, and we ended it in 18 days. She swirled the liquid. That's not something to celebrate, that's something to fear. You're being too hard on yourself. You saved billions of lives. We proved something. Marlowe set the glass down. We proved that every species in the galaxy has been fighting wrong for 10,000 years. We proved that war isn't a science, it's an art, an ugly, brutal art that we've perfected because we've had more practice than anyone else. VL didn't understand your civil war, our civil war. Marlowe nodded. 27 years. You watched it from orbit and saw chaos. You thought we were destroying ourselves. She looked at him. You were right. We were destroying ourselves, but you missed what we were building. What were you building? A generation that doesn't know peace. Marlowe's voice was quiet. My parents were born during the war. I was born during the war. My children will be born after the war, but they'll be raised by people who remember it. Every human alive has scars. Every human alive has lost someone. Every human alive has learned that survival isn't guaranteed. It's earned. She gestured at the celebrating delegates. These species, they've had peace for centuries, millennia. They've forgotten what war feels like. They've turned it into mathematics, probability calculations, acceptable losses. Her hand dropped. We haven't forgotten. We can't forget. War is inside us. It's in our bones. It's in the way we think, the way we plan, the way we see the galaxy. You see enemies, we see problems. Marlowe corrected. Every problem is a puzzle. Every puzzle has a solution. Every solution requires sacrifice. She turned to face the hall. The council thinks we're dangerous because we're violent. That's wrong. We're dangerous because we're patient. We can wait. We can plan. We can absorb losses that would shatter any other species and keep moving forward. Ver felt something shift in his understanding. The 3-week timeline, it wasn't a boast, it was a guarantee. Marlowe's eyes met his. We didn't guess how long it would take. We calculated every variable, every contingency, every possible failure. We knew exactly how to break the K-thorn before we arrived. We just needed access to confirm our assumptions. You planned this from the beginning. We planned to solve the problem. The war was a problem. Now it's solved. Marlowe finally picked up the wine glass. Council should be worried about the problems we can't solve. Like what? Marlowe drank. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight V had never heard before. Like what's waiting beyond your borders, the territory we wanted to access. She set the empty glass down. We're not expanding for resources. We're not expanding for territory. We're expanding because something out there is coming and we need to be ready. Vel's blood ran cold. What's coming? We don't know yet, but we've seen the signs, the same patterns we saw before. Our civil war, the same indicators, the same silence where noise should be. Marlowe straightened her jacket. Something is moving in the dark between galaxies. Something big, something patient. Something that's been waiting for a very long time. She walked toward the exit. When it arrives, the council will need someone who knows how to fight, not the mathematics of war, the art of it, the ugly, brutal, beautiful art of refusing to lose. She paused at the door. That's why we ended your war, not Because we're kind, not because we're generous, because we need you intact. When the real fighting starts, the door closed behind her. Ver stood alone in the corner, surrounded by celebrations. That suddenly felt hollow. The humans hadn't saved them out of compassion. Humans had saved them because they needed soldiers. The Kythe surrendered unconditionally at midnight on day 18. The Ran accepted terms that gave them territorial concessions they hadn't dreamed possible. The Council declared the longest war in recorded history officially over. Humanity received no recognition, no territory, no payment, no formal thanks. Commander Tessa Marlowe and her delegation departed 2 hours after the surrender was signed. Their ship, a battered vessel that looked like it had survived a dozen wars, simply vanished from the docking bay. No departure announcement, no navigation records, no tracking signatures. One moment they were there, the next they were gone. VL stood in the empty docking bay for a long time after they left. His communication device chimed. Message from Marlowe routed through channels that shouldn't have existed. Watch the borders, we'll be in touch. He deleted the message. The Council's surveillance was thorough. They wouldn't understand. They would see a threat, manipulation, a species positioning itself for dominance. They would miss the truth. Ver walked back through the Council headquarters, past the celebrating delegates, past the military commanders already planning their next campaigns, past the politicians already maneuvering for advantage. None of them understood what had just happened. None of them understood what had been standing in this room for 18 days. Humans weren't dangerous because they were violent. Every species was violent. Humans weren't dangerous because they were clever. Many species were clever. Humans were dangerous because they had looked into the abyss of their own extinction and decided to climb inside. They had made war their companion, their teacher, their god. They had learned to love the fire because the fire was the only thing that kept them warm. And now they were out there in the dark between stars, watching for something even worse. Ver reached the observation deck, the same deck where he'd watched Earth burn 20 cycles ago, the same screens that had shown him a species tearing itself apart. He pulled up the footage. Again, the civil war, the chaos, the destruction. This time he didn't see failure. He saw evolution. He saw a species forging itself in fire, burning away everything that couldn't survive, emerging from the flames with eyes that had seen too much in hands that had done too much, in hearts that had decided to keep beating anyway. He saw what the galaxy would face when the real darkness came. He saw humanity. And for the first time in his long life, Ambassador Vel of the Rian Federation felt something he'd never felt before. Not fear, not hope, certainty. The universe had been quiet for too long. Something was coming, something old, something hungry, something that had never faced an enemy, that refused to die. The humans were waiting for it, and somewhere in the dark between galaxies, that something was about to learn a very hard lesson. You cannot kill what has already died 1,000 times. You cannot scare what has lived with nightmares for company. You cannot break what has learned to love the fall. The war had lasted 70 cycles. Humanity ended it in 18 days. The next war would be different. The next war would be theirs. And when it came, when the darkness finally arrived and found humans standing in the gap between peace and extinction, the galaxy would understand. Not because humans were strong, not because humans were smart, because humans were the only species stupid enough to look at certain death and say, 3 weeks, give us 3 weeks, and mean it.